Gentlemen, let's talk about a really neat lock a friend of mine just brought back for me from Korea. This is an Amuna brand. This is the wrapper it came in. I can't read Korean, but if you can, there you go. There's all the information about it. And it's kind of unique because, first of all, it's 1¼ inch diameter, so we could actually find this in the United States. And the other reason it's unique is when you look at the front of it, you'll notice that it's called a multiple inline. It's much like a cruciform lock or a cross lock, except there's no warding. So we have 3 banks of pins inside of there. So let me go ahead and clamp this up, and then we'll talk just a little bit more about this lock. Let me show you the key. Okay, the key is 3-sided, so it can only go in one way. This, of course, would be the bottom, the left side, top side, and then the right side. It goes in only one way, and it is key retaining. So it's kind of a neat lock in that respect too. So I look at the pins, there were 4 pins per side, so we're looking at a total of 12 pins. Now I can tell you I have picked this, but I think one of the things you'll realize very quickly is that with a round hole, you can say, how did you pick it? How do you get tension on it? I mean, we could always glue something on the outside of it. We could drill a hole in there to put the tension bar in, but I put a lot of thought into this and made a lot of mistakes, and so I thought I'd share some of that with you. Let's first take a look at a picture that I've made. When we look inside of the Keyway, this is what we see. We see 3 banks of pins sticking out of there. So we actually have some places where we could put a tension wrench. We could put one down in this gap here, we could put one here, or we could put one there. But there's nothing to grab onto. So when I took my pick, and I actually just was kind of probing, sticking it in the back, hoping to find something to stick the tension wrench in so I could apply some kind of tension, what I discovered is that my pick would actually get caught on the pins. So I thought, wow, let's just try that. So I took a normal tension wrench, slid it in there, and lo and behold, I could get tension. I mean, it's not easy, but you can do it. If I can get it to wedge in there. There we go. We have tension. And I tried picking it. And what's happening is that my tension wrench, if I can spin this around a little bit, is wedged up against the 4 pins on the left side. And I picked on this for a long time, and I didn't have any luck. And I think the reason was when tension wrenches are never straight. They're just stuck in there, and whichever pin is struck, that's the one that is actually locked in place. It feels like it's the binding pin. So when I would begin picking, I really never knew which pin the tension wrench was wedged up against, and I never really knew if that pin was set or if it was actually the binding pin. So 1/3 of the pins, 4 of them, kind of threw me for a loop. It was just impossible for me to determine because the tension wrench, even with light tension, it kind of wedged it in there. So I got to thinking about it some more, and I realized that applying tension against all 4 pins wasn't the way to go. So I had to make a calculated gamble. And so here's what I did. I figured out that if we took a tension wrench and we simply cut an angle on the end of it, just put a little, just an angle on the end of it, so that when we wedged it in there, that sharp point was pressed right up against the shell, and the point would be pressed into the very first pin only. And that way I could pick 3 of the 4 pins inside of this row at least, honestly. They would give me honest response. The only one that would give me a little bit of problem would, of course, be that first one. Now, because of the angle, I could still press against this pin. So if I had picked everything else, and I believe that everything was picked, I could still press this one in a certain amount before the edge of my tension wrench fell off the edge here and I lost complete tension. So you see, it's a kind of a calculated gamble. What I'm gambling is that the first pin is not set to the deepest cut. Now, I don't know how many cuts are on these pins, but let's say that there's 8 cuts. Total depth might be 8. I might be able to press this down to a depth of, say 6 of those 8 before I lost tension. So it is a calculated gamble, but it's not a bad gamble when you think about it, because when designers put these things together, you guys have picked locks enough to know that they always put the low cut the high cut, low cut near the bow of the key for a couple reasons. The main reason being, of course, it gives them more security. It makes it harder for us to pick without going past that first pin and oversetting him. So I am betting that the first pin is not set to the deepest. If it is, well, what do? Well, then I have another try. I can reverse my tension wrench and put it on this one, and then I can pick all the rest of those, and maybe he's not the one. And if that doesn't work, I can put my tension wrench up here and I can lock him down and then set all of those. So while it might be a calculated gamble, it's not really a big gamble. So I discarded this wrench and I made this one. Let me get this to focus. And you can see I've cut the angle just as I've tried to draw for you in that drawing. So when I wedge this under only the first pin, we're going to try to pick this thing. So let me get everything set up and adjusted and into focus, and then we'll come back and we'll see if we can't pick this lock. Alright, I think I've got this thing adjusted so that both you can see it and I can get access to this keyway. I've also drawn a blue line covering both the core and the housing because it's circular and I'm not sure you can see any of the pins. I'm not sure you'd be able to tell whether or not the core is turning, so I think when the blue lines break from each other should make it pretty clear to you. Alright, let's take our tension wrench and see if we can just snag that first pin. And there we go, we've got it. Let me get my hand through the camera. And let's just see if we can't pick this thing in a reasonable amount of time. Now remember, we're only dealing with 12 pins. And in my experience, none of these are security pins. We make it a little bit harder. I should probably start on the left and then just go clockwise. That'll be my logical progression, I guess. Okay, tension on these type of locks is very, very light. Just a tip of, I know you can't see it, but just the tip of my finger is on that tension wrench. And I'm just looking for the binding pin, just like we always do. Think of this as a master lock. I mean, just 3 rows of 4 pins. No big deal. Alright? Okay, the only one you might have trouble seeing is when I go in there and try to do the right side. I'm not sure if I'm going to block your view or not. Okay, that's one clockwise. Let's see if we can check the left again. Still springy. And there we go. You can see the line departing now. Now I'm only going to go just a little bit because there's an important feature about these locks that you need to be aware of. When you pick it and begin to turn it, it'll go either way, left or right, but in this case I've picked it to the right. When you begin to rotate, you can rotate it. Let me grab the activator in the back, and we can begin to turn him. About that point, the door will come undone. It will decouple the latch and you can open the door. You need to be aware of that because if you continue to turn this, and I'm going to do it and it's going to screw me, but I think it's important to demonstrate. When you continue to turn it to the 1/4 mark, it will lock again. Now it's completely locked and you might think, well, no problem, we'll just put the key in there. Well, the problem is these keyways are not perfectly round. They're a little bit offset with this outer armored ring. So now when we try to take the key and we try to put him in there, he won't go. So if you pick one of these doors, and you don't want to have to pick it another 3 times, 1, 2, 3, in order to get a complete circle. Or you could reverse pick it. That's another choice. But again, your binding order is going to change. Everything's going to change. So rather than have your customer stand there and watch you pick it another 3 times, just don't quite turn it to the 1/4 mark, and that way you won't have to worry about repicking these type of locks. Anyway, fellas, that's all there is to it. They're a little bit intimidating to look at. I'll agree to that. If you've never seen one before, you might say, oh my God, I can't do it. But really, they're not that difficult. The most difficult part, of course, is getting your tension on that first pin and figuring out which of the pins does not need to be set. By the way, the pin on which we were applying our tension did it did need to be set, but only probably 2 depths. It was just a touch just to get it to set. So, as I said earlier, it was a gamble, but it was a calculated gamble, and in this case we won. We didn't have to try out any of the other pins to see if we needed to tension off of any of those. So anyway, fellas, there you go. Multiple inline circular keyway lock, 12 pins picked, and you can do it too. Trust me. Thanks for your time. Everybody stay safe and stay legal.